Hello, I'm Alma Schneider. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and the proud mother of 4 children, one of whom has Prader-Willi syndrome.
And I am Iris Miller. I'm a certified rehabilitation counselor and the proud mother of 2 children, one of whom has quadriplegic cerebral palsy and is nonverbal.
In this podcast, we discuss the uncensored truth about raising children with disabilities.
Prepare to laugh, cry, and hopefully learn something new.
This is 2 Moms, No Fluff.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to 2 Moms, No Fluff, the podcast in which we discuss the uncensored truth about raising kids with disabilities. Today, I'm here with my partner, Alma Schneider. I'm Iris Miller, and we have a special guest with us today. Allow me to introduce Vickie Rubin. And Vickie is an author, an educator, an advocate, and I'll let Vickie introduce herself. Vickie, please introduce yourself for our listeners who didn't hear about you before and would like to learn something new about you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Vickie Rubin, and I am an author. I wrote the book, Raising Jess, a story of hope, and I hope to talk a little more about that later. I'm a mom. I'm a nana. Originally, I wanted to be grandma, but my first grandson named me Nana, and the rest is history. I'm an advocate for individuals with disabilities and also families of individuals with disabilities. My oldest daughter, Jessica, was born with a rare chromosome deletion. She's 41 years old now, and she has 2 siblings, my younger siblings. My daughter, Carly, is our baby, who's 36, and my son, Alex, who's 39. Just quickly, I've been married for 44 years. I got my undergrad at the University of Miami in Florida, and I met my husband, Mitch. And I always say he schlepped me up to Buffalo. And I've been living in Buffalo, New York, since 1979. And we have 2 dogs, a Hungarian Vizsla. I don't know if anyone's heard of that. And an Italian. Oh, yay.
My sister-in-law had one.
Really? They have
Yes.
a lot of energy.
Mm-hmm.
And then an Italian Greyhound, who's also a therapy dog. So we do some volunteer stuff.
Nice.
Mhm.
Nice. Well, what we like to ask everyone who's on this podcast who has a child with a disability is, what was it like when you received the diagnosis?
So I write a lot about that in the book because my mama knowledge knew something was wrong right away.
Mm-hmm.
And the doctor kept telling me maybe I needed some counseling, that something was wrong with me.
Wow.
And so I would go to every visit every month, and he would kind of talk me into, oh, everything's going okay. And I'd go home and I'd be like, all right. And then a day or 2 later, it would then dawn on me, no, it's just not right. And then I would go back. And after 6 months of this, I call him Dr. Dismissal. I do what every Long Island girl did. I called my mother. I went to a hospital in Long Island, North Shore Jewish, and was seen by an expert in neurology, and they did tests on Jessica and determined that she was delayed in every single milestone. And when I heard that, I mean, in a way, I felt relief because I knew, and I know it's odd to say a feeling of relief. Of course, there was sadness and my life is different, but now I felt like I could do something about it. Whereas before I felt like I was just fighting the doctor. And in my career, I worked with a lot of families, and Jessica's 41. So I was thinking, hey, back in the day, the doctors didn't believe you. It's not back in the day. And it's still going on. I did a lot of training for physicians about keeping families as part of a team, because a family might not have the medical knowledge, but no one has the knowledge that a family has of their child, the day-to-day history. And why not use that resource? Why wouldn't every medical professional use that as a resource?
Yeah, you're absolutely
Mhm.
right. And it is very common for it to happen now. And I'm just so impressed, as I'm sure Iris is, that this was your first child and you knew you didn't even have anything to compare it to. So you really followed your gut, which is something that we talk about a lot
Yeah,
on the podcast, which is what we have to do because we don't always have that support of of what should be a team.
even family. I had family who also, calm down, she's fine. She's fine.
Mhm.
It's you. So, and I know other families must have that as well because,
Absolutely.
it's part of denial and
Hmm.
yeah. Mm.
So, Vicky, if you can tell us a little bit about the first years after the diagnosis, like your life with Jessica, like how did that unfold for you? I know that for many families, those are the hard years of adjusting to a new reality. So, if you can share your experience.
I wish Vicky now could talk to Vicky then
Mhm.
and just say, okay, calm down. You're going to be okay. You're going to survive this. You're actually going to thrive and your family will thrive. But of course, Vicky then didn't know that. When I got back to Buffalo after hearing that diagnosis, I went to Buffalo woman. It was actually called Buffalo Children's Hospital then. Now it's called Oshai, and spoke with the head of Robert Warner Rehab Center. He thought that Jessica looked similar to his children. And so genetically, we were looking for, it was called Creed-Duchad. It's a deletion in the fifth chromosome. She
Yes.
doesn't have that.
Oh,
But for years, we thought she had that. So we went to national Creed-Duchad meetings. And Creed-Duchad means cry of the cat because most of the children with this diagnosis have a very high pitched cry.
okay.
Jessica did not have that cry. So we noticed when we were at these meetings, everyone kind of looked like cousins, and Jessica did not look like a
Mhm.
cousin. And it was later identified that she did not have this diagnosis. Meanwhile, I went into mama fix it mode and I did something called patterning. Have you heard of patterning?
No.
Okay. That could be another 2-hour session, but I'm just going to say it's not something the medical professionals um, uh, um, advise, but there's nothing that could hurt a child. And basically, I did a modified version where 4 hours a day, 6 days a week, I had volunteers come into our house and move Jessica in ways, and I always do this because we did so much with her arms, to try to create new pathways to her brain. The
Hmm.
philosophy being that when she was in the womb, the pathways didn't develop right, and let's kind of make a new roads to the brain. It didn't work, and we spent probably 2 years doing that. And the problem with that, and for other new families, is that I spent so much time trying to, I didn't realize that fix Jessica, but trying to give her every opportunity, because the person who we were working with patterning said every minute you lose is a month for a child like
Oh,
yours. So
what
I
pressure.
felt this pressure of, oh no, I've got to keep going. And I remember one day my husband was sitting on the couch with Jess and they were watching football. And I'm like, what, you need to stimulate her. And he looks at
Mhm,
me. She's also my daughter who can sit and watch TV with us.
mhm,
And I would love to say, wow, light bulb, that changed me. But I heard another speaker who was talking about siblings. What actually changed me is having another child, because
mhm,
you do not have the time anymore to to be obsessed 24/7. Once I had another child, we stopped patterning, and our life became really, it was so much for the better. But the beginning, it was very, very hard. It was hard because there's so much unknown.
Yeah. And so many, I mean, you are just speaking the language of so many parents who just feel like we have to do constant therapies and constant, techniques because of that very pressure. So it's just so debilitating for everyone to be so focused on a cure or fixing it and just letting children be children at least part of the time. So sorry, what were you going to
Oh, I
say?
just wanted to say during my career, I worked, what I did was I worked with other families of young children with disabilities. And I
Mhm.
always made sure that I spoke to them about, yes, the therapies are important, but it's equally important. Go to the playground,
Yeah.
go to the mall, have
Mhm.
fun. It's not all about therapies. There's a bonding that needs to take as mother and child and family and child, and your child will thrive on that as much as every therapy. But
Yeah.
it's hard to convince
Yeah.
people.
Hindsight is 2020. And
2020.
there's
Boy,
a
am
ton
I
of
smart in hindsight. Hindsight.
there's also a societal pressure to do all the other stuff. And there's a real tinge of ableism in that we got to cure it, we got to fix it, and this is going to work. So when did you become an activist in this area?
So I call myself an advocate. I when Jessica was born, I had my undergrad degree in elementary education, and
Okay.
and I've said this on numerous times, other times. They asked me after if I wanted to go into special education for my master's, and I went, "Oh, I'm not going to have the patience for that." And I always say, "Karma." Guess what? I have way more patience than I thought. um, so after Jessica was, a few years old, I went back for my master's in special education. And originally, I just went back because I wanted to be able to have all the information so I can advocate for Jess. But I had an amazing opportunity to work for the Early Childhood Direction Center. It's no longer funded, but it was funded by New York State. And
Mhm.
my grant was administered by Children's Hospital. And what we did, we worked with families of children birth to 5 with special needs. And we also worked with all the professionals who worked with these families. So we helped families understand transition, going from early intervention to school, preschool, and then school age. And so I got a taste. I spoke to families all day long and got a taste of advocating. And I retired about 5 years ago, but my daughter moved into kind of a unique group home, and I get a lot of calls now from families who are older. How did you do the group home thing? How is it having an adult? And I also get calls from young families, who know of me, who still ask. So I still help advocate when I can. So,
Alma
but
and
that was
I, oh, sorry.
sorry. That was kind of a silver lining to all this because I really didn't know that was going to be part of my journey, and it was the best part. I was a director and administrator of the program and all of that. But talking to families and working with families, that was really what I love doing.
So we definitely want to talk more about the group home, but before we dive into that, I wanted to ask you about the writing and how did the writing come about, and when did you start with the kind of being an author of your own life?
So, all right, I'm going to just plug it again. Raising Jess's
Plug
story.
away. We need to read this.
3 awards. Yay.
Woo, congratulations.
And it's I was just talking to another author, and writing the book, I loved every moment of it. Promoting the book is very hard work. um so I always loved to write, and I had articles in our local newspapers and local magazines, and my mom always said to me, "Vickie, you should write a book." And I always said, please, I've got 3 children. One is in a wheelchair. I'm working full time. I can't write a book. And then I retired, and my kids gave me like old school dictionary and thesaurus and a pen and paper, said, write your book. And I thought, both your parents, I thought, what am I going to write? Like a daily diary? Today I did this. I woke up at 8 o'clock. I gave Jessica medicine. I didn't know where to start. And then I read a book. It was a book of essays written by somebody who had a really devastating stroke, and he was only able to write. His friend was able to write. He was only able to say what words through eye gaze, and wrote a whole book, and it was written in essays. And I thought, oh, that's how I write. I can write this in essays. So that kind of started it. And my mom at the same time developed Alzheimer's. So I felt like I had a real time clock. I wanted her to know I wrote the book.
Mhm.
So I would write a chapter every morning. I woke up at 6 a.m. It took 4.5 years. Write a chapter. I would, my husband would be my first editor to say, yeah, this is how I remember it happening. And then my son was my second editor, and he's tough. If it got through him, I thought, okay, I'm good. I'm on the road. And then I would send it to my dad, and he read every raw chapter to my mom. And so before it was formally edited and published, she did hear the whole book, and she got on the phone. And at that point, she was hardly speaking. And she got on the phone and she said, love your book. So like, I knew she heard it. I knew
Yeah.
she knew I did it.
Yeah.
And I wish she would have seen the finished product. But so that's how it happened. But I really wanted to share our story. I'll just give a brief little story. There was a grandparent whose granddaughter has a similar diagnosis to Jessica and the daughter, and I belong to a Facebook support group, and they're part of this group. And he bought the book for himself and his daughter, and they both read it. And he said it opened up conversations for me that I was unable to have with my daughter because I didn't know how to broach this conversation. But you
Mhm.
had said it, and then we started talking, and he said it was just, oh, bless you. He said it was just a beautiful way for them to enhance their conversation and an understanding of each other.
Wow, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's why we all share so much, because it gives people license, and it's like, okay, they did it, so I can do it. I mean, something as simple as just being exposed to other people doing something can really stir something in you and say, oh, this is actually okay to do this. Nobody's gonna disappear if we bring this up, or run away
Correct.
screaming, or you can just try. And that's something that's very powerful from any parent sharing their story. So thank you for taking the time. That's really amazing, and you were very disciplined, it sounds like, in writing this. I mean, and
I
taking the time.
am very disciplined. I am the most disciplined, disorganized person you know.
Sounds
I
like
mean,
you.
I'm so, I am so disciplined. And then, you see
Good.
papers and this and that, but yeah.
That's great. So going back to her childhood and your earlier parenting, what were the teenage years like? Because for a lot of parents, the teenage years are very different from the early years. So can you describe what that was like?
Um, I'm sorry, Iris, I'm trying to remember who has a child with cerebral palsy.
I
I
do. I do.
Okay. Okay. And when how old is your child?
My daughter is 15 and she uses an
Okay.
eye gaze communication to talk.
Okay. So when your child becomes a teenager, but still has similar needs that they did as maybe anybody else's toddler or even younger has, which is like Jessica, there are why I was saying that is the physical part becomes hard. Now your child is 15, and there's you have to figure out how to do the lifting without destroying your back, and you have to learn how to lift, and you have to have the appropriate equipment. um my husband and I tried to be heroes for a long time. I mean, I was lifting Jessica. She weighed maybe 20 pounds less than me, getting her in our car, and then we were lifting the wheelchair. She did not have an electric wheelchair. Putting that in the car until somebody said to me, you got to stop doing this. And then we got a van. But so the physicality of it was a huge change. Also education. We went, Jessica's a lot older than your children. So we went from fully excluded, I would say, and we did a lot of different types of education. But in middle school, Jessica became fully included, and she was a first in our middle school to come to school, and first wheelchair user. And so they had to adapt the school a lot for her. And the middle school years were great. But as she aged out of middle school, we realized for high school, it wouldn't be, in our situation, it wouldn't be as easy to do that. The classes are different, the classrooms are different, the kids are different. And so we did more of a reverse inclusion, whereas high school kids who were interested in working with individuals who receive services came into the classroom. And this was a huge success. And Jessica went to every prom and she was in chorus, and she did so many inclusive things, but she also got a lot of the skills she needed for later on when she was as an adult. So I think every part of being a parent of a child with a disability, there's so many transitions. There are, the whole life is transition.
Yeah.
But the teenage years are also a huge transition, because you're starting to think, okay, what's adulthood going to look like, and what are we going to be able to do, and what are we not going to be able to do forever, and how do I start working on these things now? And so it was a big learning experience.
And it's not just practical; it's emotional preparation along with practical. So we need to brace ourselves for that. We think that, okay, we did all that and we're done, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, this is going to be going on forever, and everything's changed, and resources change, and the services change. So it's a lot to tackle, and I think that a lot of people are not prepared for that. Which is why we like to talk about it, especially in our podcast and all that we do, because this is, we gotta fortify ourselves to be able to deal with these kinds of transitions, because the emotional can be a lot harder than the practical in a lot of cases. Not always, but it's important to think about that as you're heading into those years. So
this is the no fluff part of your
exactly.
right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So Vickie, I want to ask you a little bit about the thought, the decision, the kind of path that led into the placement in a group home. If you can share that. I know that lots of parents are dealing with that kind of internal debate of discussing with themselves the future of their children, where and why. So if you can talk to that a bit.
Yeah, I actually do presentations on this, and I call it Plan B. And it's difficult, and I'm gonna put myself in the story right now. When Jessica was born, and at that point there were institutions, and in my mind she was never moving into a group home, and my husband and I were convinced she was never moving into a group home. And as time went on, and Jessica got older and we got older, and she is somebody who needs assistance with all daily life skills. So we're talking feeding, going to the bathroom, dressing, everything you would do for a toddler or an infant, Jessica needs done for her. And the reality comes in of how are you going to do this forever? So it took some convincing for my husband uh, because both I was in the field, so I kind of knew what a group home was like, and I had to show him what a group home looked like, and that it was not an institution. It was actually like a family home.
Mhm.
I joined this local group who was creating a unique group home in the community, and this was in 2007 or 6, and there was abundant funding. And I know maybe your audience don't even know what that word means, because there has not been abundant funding in forever. But
Mhm.
we had a window, and we were able to build this home with a human service agency that allowed for 5 women with um, unique skills and a lot of family involvement. And
Mhm.
so when we first joined this group, I thought, I'm going to join because I'm going to give them my special education expertise. Jessica's not moving into this house. I'm just there to help them. And we met for about a year like that. And then they said, oh, let's do a subcommittee. And I thought, all right, I'll join the subcommittee. And then it was like, okay, we need 5 women. And we did it. And I just want to say to families, this is one of the hardest decisions you I all right, this is one of the hardest decisions we had to make, but we wanted to be able to have Jessica living in a house that was our decision where she was living, with the people that we chose that she was living with, and setting up all the supports for her while we were able to do this, versus an emergency placement. And what happens to many families, there are families who are in their parents are 70s and 80s, and their adult children need similar help to Jessica, and all of a sudden they can't do it anymore, and there's an emergency placement. Is it
Right.
even in the community? Maybe. Is it in a house you would have chosen? Maybe. And so it's real important I think, to do this while you're healthy enough to make this step and to provide all the support that's needed, and all the supports that's needed when you're no longer on the planet.
Yeah.
So
And
big
you're
decision.
absolutely right. It's a very, and it's a really hard thing for people to kind of process and tackle that, but it needs to be said. You don't want you want your child to be able to acclimate to a place while you're still around, while you're still able to really be there for them, as opposed to all of a sudden there's a there's just like a shock to everyone's system, and that can make it so much worse. So even though it seems like it's a harder thing to do, it's the smarter thing to do for all reasons, to get it going, or even to start thinking about it and to start taking steps toward that. So thank you for sharing that.
I just want to add something.
Mhm.
So when Jessica, even when she comes home now, she will not move her wheelchair. Will not go to her house. She hears them starting to cook in the kitchen. The last time we're sitting together, we're talking, all of a sudden someone's in the kitchen. She does a 3-point turn, turns, does a real cut right into the kitchen. She never did this at home. And the other thing that's just beautiful, she has a friend in the house who is has many more skills than Jessica. She can do she can take care of herself. The
Mhm.
relationship between these 2 women, I wish I could send you the picture. It's so beautiful. It's a beautiful relationship. So Jessica developed friendships on her own. This is typical stuff. Your kids move
Yes.
out of the house, they become as independent as they can be, and they develop their own relationships and friendships. And it's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. So I think a lot of us feel like, okay, they can never live independently, but there's a lot of stuff that can be done, to give as much independence as possible. And I think that once we open our mind to the different uh, possibilities for some kind of an independence, it's a little bit easier to kind of wrap your head around, uh, having our children live, I look at it as roommates, like they're living in a house with roommates. You know, it,
Absolutely.
it's a mental shift. It's like, what adult doesn't want that, to be able to move out of the house from their parents and have some semblance of independence. I have our last question for you. What would you like to share with other parents in our community about your journey, their journey, anything about disability that you'd like to elaborate on for them? Your words of wisdom with all your experience.
One thing is embrace a changed life. So many people, oh, I'm sorry, and feel bad, and
Hmm.
and we don't feel bad for ourselves. Our life, it's not what we planned. It's absolutely not what we planned. It's not even anything we knew about, but it's been a beautiful journey, and we have learned so much from Jessica, our siblings, and the people around us.
Hmm.
So, although it's not what we planned, it's still okay.
Yeah.
And and just two other things
Yes.
for
Let's hear it.
families. I know I just said it, but think of Plan B. Even if you think you're never going to do it,
Hmm.
think of Plan B. And and I know a lot of families sometimes struggle with, should I have more children after they have a child with a disability? And for us, it was it was the right decision, and it didn't take away anything from what we needed to do for our daughter. It enhanced her life with siblings
Hmm.
and our life as a family.
Yeah.
So and if I'll give the final thing about my book. It's not only for families, but it's for siblings and for grandparents and teachers.
Hmm.
And I've tried to send the book to physicians so they can get the family perspective
Mm.
and what
Great.
families are going through, the parent perspective.
So important. Thank you. And we're trying to do the same thing. So we're all
I
on the same
know.
page. We need to get everybody in society involved in our journey, because disability is a normal part of life. I mean,
That's
diversity is, we're all diverse in different ways, and it's a normal part of life. So get on board, everybody else. We know it as parents, but
mhm.
everybody else needs to get on board as well. So thank you so much. Iris, did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, Vicky, I just wanted to thank you, A, for writing the book, and B, for joining us for this episode. I think every individual experience is so unique and so important to hear, because it gives yet another aspect to our collective story. And
Mhm.
I really appreciate you discussing all of this in an open mind and heart. And thank you for joining us today.
I,
And thank you for all of our listeners, old and new. And yes, you wanted to add something?
I just want to thank both of you. Thank you for hosting me today, but also thank you for what you're doing, because it's so important for families to hear this from parents who are experienced, and so people who've walked in their shoes. So thank you also for what you're doing, and I'm sorry I interrupted.
Thank
No,
you.
no, all is good. And I want to mention to all of our listeners, if you have any questions for Alma, myself, or for Vicky, please feel free to write to us at info@2momsnofluff, and listen in for our next episode in a couple of weeks. Thank you so much. Have a beautiful day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
For more information, please go to www.twomomsnofluff.com. Thank you.
If you like this podcast, please subscribe and give it a 5-star rating so more people can hear it. Thank you.